Your soulmate's family secretly discussed you. What they decided will surprise you. My beloved child. Your soulmate's family said your name behind a closed door, believing you would never know what happened in that room. But this was not an ordinary conversation. Someone had brought up your connection, and within seconds, the atmosphere changed. One person defended you immediately. Another remained strangely quiet. And then someone older in the family asked a question that made your soulmate freeze. Are you truly serious about this person? What happened next surprised everyone. Your soulmate did not hesitate. They admitted that their feelings for you had become deeper than the family realized, and that walking away from you was no longer something they could pretend would be easy. But there was still one concern hanging over the room. Something the family had noticed about your relationship that your soulmate had never told you. Don't skip, because this concern became the reason they made a decision nobody expected. At first, your soulmate believed the family was preparing to stand against the connection. They could hear it in the careful questions. Why you? Why now? What makes this different from everything that came before? But then one family member revealed something unexpected. They had been quietly watching the way your soulmate changed whenever your name appeared. They noticed the softer voice, the nervous smile, the way your soulmate could be surrounded by people and still seem distracted whenever something reminded them of you. More importantly, they noticed what happened during the difficult moments. Your soulmate could hide many emotions, but they could not hide how deeply the possibility of losing you affected them. That realization shifted the entire conversation. Someone who had originally doubted you suddenly said, "Maybe we've been looking at this the wrong way." Your soulmate looked up, stunned. Because the family was no longer discussing whether you belonged in their life. They were beginning to discuss what needed to happen before you could truly become part of it. Then came the decision. Not rejection. Not separation. Something far more surprising. The family agreed that your soulmate needed to stop hiding behind uncertainty and finally become clear about what they wanted with you. One person told them that if their feelings were real, they could not continue expecting you to wait forever while they remained silent. Those words hit your soulmate harder than anyone realized. For the first time, the family was not warning them about you, they were warning them about losing you. And that was when your soulmate confessed something they had kept hidden even from the people closest to them. They admitted they had already imagined a future with you. Not casually. Not as some passing fantasy. They had pictured introducing you properly, sitting beside you at family gatherings, and building something that would no longer need to remain uncertain. But just when everyone thought the conversation had reached its biggest revelation, one family member leaned forward and mentioned something they had discovered about you, and what they said next completely changed your soulmate's expression. The moment those words entered the room, your soulmate stopped moving. The family member explained that they had learned something about you, not a scandal, not some hidden mistake, but something far more personal. They had realized how much you had endured quietly while this connection remained uncertain. Somehow, they understood that you had been carrying emotions your soulmate never fully saw. You had given patience when you could have demanded answers. You had stepped back when chasing would have been easier. And instead of turning your pain into anger, you protected your dignity. That discovery completely changed the family's perspective. One person looked directly at your soulmate and asked, "Do you understand what this person has been risking emotionally for you?" Your soulmate had no immediate answer. Because suddenly, they were being forced to see your silence differently, and what they realized made their eyes fill with emotion. Then another unexpected truth surfaced. Someone in the family admitted they had originally believed you were the one creating distance. They assumed you were uncertain, perhaps even uninterested. But after hearing everything, they realized the opposite might be true. Your soulmate had been sending mixed signals without understanding how deeply those signals could affect you. One day they seemed ready to move closer, the next, fear made them retreat. And you were left trying to understand which version was real. Stay till the end, because this was the moment the conversation stopped being about whether the family accepted you. It became about whether your soulmate was brave enough to finally choose you openly. One relative said something painfully simple: if you keep waiting for the perfect moment, someone this important may eventually stop waiting for you. Your soulmate lowered their eyes because those words touched the exact fear they had refused to admit. But the biggest surprise came when the family made a second decision. They agreed not to interfere. No pressure. No secret attempt to separate you. Instead, they told your soulmate that whatever happened next needed to come directly from their heart. And your soulmate responded with something nobody in that room expected. They said they were tired of pretending this connection meant less than it did. They admitted that every attempt to distance themselves had only made your presence stronger in their mind. Your name appeared in ordinary moments. Your absence felt louder than conversations with other people. And somewhere along the way, the fear of loving you had become smaller than the fear of losing you completely. Then your soulmate revealed they had already been considering one specific step toward you. The family asked what it was, but before answering, your soulmate reached for their phone, and the name glowing on that screen was yours. Your soulmate stared at your name for several seconds, their thumb hovering over the screen while everyone in the room remained unusually quiet. They had opened your conversation many times before, typed something honest, then erased it because fear always arrived before courage. But tonight felt different. Their family had just said aloud everything they had been avoiding. One relative gently asked, "What are you afraid will happen if you finally tell them?" That question exposed the real problem. Your soulmate was not afraid that you would reject them. They were afraid you might have already changed. What if your patience had finally run out? What if the silence they created had taught you how to live without them? And then your soulmate admitted something even the family had never heard before: they had been checking for signs that you still cared. That confession changed the mood again. Your soulmate revealed that small things connected to you had become impossible to ignore. A memory would surface unexpectedly. An old conversation would replay in their mind. Sometimes they would almost reach out, only to convince themselves they should wait another day. But one family member immediately challenged that thinking. Another day becomes another week, they said, and eventually silence becomes an answer. Your soulmate knew they were right. The family could see it too. This was no longer someone casually wondering about you. This was someone terrified that their hesitation had damaged something precious. Then came another question. If they stood in front of you right now, what would you say? Your soulmate took a long breath. Their answer was quiet, but unmistakable. They said they would finally explain why they pulled away, and the reason had never been a lack of love. That was when the hidden truth began coming out. Your soulmate confessed that the deeper their feelings became, the more vulnerable they felt. Loving you meant imagining a future they could actually lose, and instead of moving closer, they tried to control that fear by creating distance. But the distance never brought peace. It only made them realize what your presence had meant. Now even their family understood why something had seemed different about them for so long. One relative finally said, "Then stop making them guess." Your soulmate looked back at your name on the phone and began typing. This time, they did not immediately erase the words. The first sentence was more honest than anything they had sent you before. But before pressing send, your soulmate suddenly asked the family one final question, and the answer they received made them completely rewrite the message. The question your soulmate asked was simple, but it changed everything. What if I've already hurt them too much? Nobody answered immediately. Then the same family member who had once doubted your connection spoke first. They said reaching out would mean nothing if your soulmate only wanted relief from their own guilt. If they truly cared about you, the message needed to acknowledge what you had experienced, not just explain their fear. That hit hard. Your soulmate looked down at the words they had typed and realized almost every sentence was about themselves. Their confusion. Their hesitation. Their emotions. So they deleted it all. Then they started again, this time beginning with something they had struggled to admit for months: you deserved clarity long before now. And as those words appeared on the screen, someone in the room noticed your soulmate's hands were trembling. But your soulmate still did not press send. Instead, they revealed another secret. There had been one particular moment when they almost contacted you before, a moment when missing you became so intense that they opened your conversation late at night and wrote nearly an entire confession. Yet something stopped them. They had convinced themselves that staying silent was somehow protecting both of you from disappointment. Now the family challenged that belief. One person quietly said, "You weren't protecting them. You were making the decision for them." Your soulmate went completely still. That sentence exposed the truth they had avoided. You were never given the chance to decide what you could handle, what you wanted, or whether this connection deserved another opportunity. And suddenly your soulmate understood why the family's decision mattered so much. They were being told to stop controlling the outcome and finally trust you with the truth. Then someone asked to hear the new message before it was sent. Your soulmate hesitated, but eventually read part of it aloud. They admitted they had been afraid, that their distance had never reflected the depth of their feelings, and that they understood if you no longer trusted what they said. But there was one sentence they refused to read to the family. When asked why, your soulmate held the phone closer and whispered, "That part is only for them." Nobody pushed further. Instead, the family made another surprising choice. They stood up and began leaving the room, giving your soulmate privacy to decide what happened next. Before the last person walked out, however, they turned around and said something that made your soulmate look at your name differently. "Before you send anything, tell them what you decided about your future." And that was when your soulmate realized the message was missing the most important truth of all. For several minutes, your soulmate sat alone with that final piece of advice echoing through their mind. Tell them what you decided about your future. Suddenly, a simple message no longer felt enough. You deserved more than another emotional confession followed by uncertainty. So your soulmate added the sentence they had been afraid to write: they did not want to keep you in an undefined place anymore. They wanted to know whether the two of you could finally have an honest conversation about what this connection could become. No disappearing afterward. No pretending the feelings were smaller than they were. And then your soulmate paused, because making that promise meant something serious. If you opened the door again, they would have to show you through actions that this time was different. The surprising part was that they finally seemed ready to do exactly that. Outside the room, the family continued talking quietly, but now the conversation had completely changed. Earlier, some of them had wondered whether you were right for your soulmate. Now they were asking whether your soulmate was ready to be right for you. One relative admitted they had judged you without understanding the full story. Another said your patience revealed more about your character than any introduction ever could. But there was still one concern. They knew words could sound beautiful in an emotional moment. What would happen tomorrow, when fear returned? Would your soulmate retreat again? That question eventually reached them, and instead of becoming defensive, your soulmate gave an answer nobody expected. They said, "Then remind me what tonight cost me." Because tonight they had finally understood that every time they avoided vulnerability, they were gambling with the possibility that you might quietly close the door for good. Then your soulmate did something that made the entire family realize this was no temporary burst of emotion. They stopped asking everyone what they should say. They stopped looking for reassurance. They simply returned to the message, read it once, and placed their finger over the send button. But at that exact moment, a notification appeared on the screen. Your soulmate's expression changed instantly. Someone nearby noticed and asked what happened, but they did not answer. They just stared at the phone as though the timing could not possibly be real. It was something connected to you, something small enough that anyone else might have ignored it, yet meaningful enough to make your soulmate reconsider whether sending that message was still the right first move. And within seconds, they made a completely different decision. Instead of sending the confession they had spent all night writing, your soulmate opened another screen and prepared to do something far more direct. Your soulmate opened the call screen. For the first time that night, there was no carefully edited paragraph standing between their heart and yours. Just your name, the call button, and the terrifying possibility that you might actually answer. Their family noticed what they were about to do, but nobody interrupted. One person quietly stepped farther away, giving them space. Your soulmate took a breath and almost pressed the button, then stopped. A realization had hit them. Calling you without warning could place you in an uncomfortable position, especially after so much uncertainty. So instead of acting impulsively, they returned to the message and added one honest question: would you be willing to talk when you're ready? It was different from everything they had written before. They were not demanding your attention. They were finally giving you the choice they should have given you all along. But something else happened before they could send it. The relative who had been most skeptical about you returned to the doorway and admitted there was something they had not told your soulmate earlier. They had once expected this connection to disappear on its own. They assumed time and distance would eventually weaken whatever existed between you. Instead, they watched the opposite happen. Every time your soulmate tried to move forward without addressing their feelings, something seemed unfinished. Their mood changed whenever your name surfaced. Certain conversations became uncomfortable. Even happy moments carried a strange absence. Then came the surprising admission, "I thought you needed to forget them. Now I think you need to face what you feel." Your soulmate looked stunned, because this was the last person they expected to support an honest conversation with you. That support removed the final excuse your soulmate had been hiding behind. They could no longer blame timing, family expectations, or uncertainty about how others would react. The decision belonged to them now. They looked at the message one final time and understood something important. Contacting you could not guarantee reconciliation. You might need time. You might have questions. You might even decide that too much had happened. But for once, your soulmate was prepared to respect whatever truth you gave them. Their finger moved toward the screen again. Then they suddenly deleted one final sentence, the sentence promising that everything would immediately become perfect. They knew they could not honestly promise perfection. What they could promise was consistency, honesty, and the courage to stop running when emotions became difficult. And just before they pressed send, your soulmate whispered a sentence to themselves that revealed what their family's secret conversation had truly made them decide about you. The sentence was barely louder than a breath. "If they give me one real chance, I'm not hiding anymore." Your soulmate stared at those words on the screen as if they had finally admitted the truth to themselves. This was bigger than sending a message. Their family's secret discussion had forced them to choose between protecting their fear and protecting the connection they still cared about. And for the first time, fear was losing. They pressed send. The room suddenly felt impossibly quiet. Your soulmate placed the phone down, picked it up again seconds later, then laughed nervously at themselves. There was nothing left to edit now. No sentence to erase. No excuse to hide behind. The truth had finally crossed the distance between you, but what happened next depended on something your soulmate could no longer control: your response. While they waited, one family member sat beside them and asked what they would do if you needed time. Your soulmate's answer surprised them. "I'll give it. No chasing. No emotional pressure. No demanding an immediate decision." They finally understood that rebuilding something meaningful would require patience from them now, just as patience had once been required from you. Then another question came, "And if they ask why you waited so long?" Your soulmate looked toward the phone and admitted they would tell you everything. The fear. The confusion. The moments they almost reached out. Even the family conversation that changed their perspective. But there was one detail they still seemed nervous to reveal. The exact decision the family had made concerning you. Because their relatives had agreed on something beyond simply staying out of the way. If you and your soulmate chose to move forward, they wanted to do something that would show you their opinion had genuinely changed. Then the phone moved. One small vibration, and your soulmate froze. Everyone nearby noticed immediately. Their eyes dropped to the screen, but for several seconds they did not touch it. After spending so long imagining this moment, suddenly they were frightened to discover what was actually waiting there. Was it you? Had you seen the message? Had you answered? Your soulmate finally reached for the phone, and their expression shifted the instant the screen lit up. But instead of showing anyone what they saw, they stood and walked away from the family, needing privacy. Someone called after them, asking whether everything was okay. Your soulmate stopped at the doorway, looked back with an expression nobody could quite read, and said, "I think something just changed." Because what appeared on that screen was connected to you, but it was not the response they had been expecting.